So again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Um, Alfie and I from KCC, we had the honor of talking with Sergeant Kieu and Peter, like what's it, like a couple weeks ago. And for Alfie and I, we actually didn't know much about the Hawaii Army National Guard. And what they shared with us was super insightful. And I thought, what an opportunity to maybe update everyone who maybe were in the same boat as us, or maybe an opportunity to refresh on what they know about the Guard. And so I'm so happy to bring back um, Sergeant Kieu, Sergeant Peter. Um, Take it away. This is all yours.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I'm Sergeant Balicoco, but everyone can call me Q. I have my colleague over here, Staff Sergeant Peter Lay. You can call him Peter. We're recruiters with the Hawaii Army National Guard. So today I would like to, give you more information on, what we are, what we do, what our mission is, some of the benefits and the features that maybe your students would be interested in. Before we dive into that, first of all, I want to thank Sheldon and Alfie for putting on this event. I really appreciate it. And everybody who's tuning in right now for your time. And before we dive into, what the Guard is and the benefits, I would like to introduce myself, and Peter can go ahead after me about like who we are and how we started our career. First of all, for me, I started out when I was a senior in high school. I was in JROTC, and I joined my senior year in high school, and people were like, why did you join? I'm like, honestly, I wanted to do something else with my life or better with my life. But honestly, at the same time, I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do. I actually took a while to figure that out. And putting on an event like this, I honestly never thought that I'd be kind of counseling counselors on like some of the benefits that the Guard has to offer. But to me, honestly, to put it in a nutshell, I owe a lot to the Guard, meaning, I work full time for them. My job is to basically tell people how great the Guard is. Second of all, for as far as my education, I didn't pay to go to school here. I got paid to go to school. In addition to that, let's see, I paid $0 down payment for the house that I live in, and I even met my husband through the Guard, so I definitely highly recommend. So that's me in a nutshell. Peter, why don't you take it ahead?
Yeah, so I'm the total opposite of Q or Sergeant Balicoco. When I joined, it was just out of the whim, like I was just going through some stuff. My girlfriend just left me, and so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna join the military, and I did that. I've never been in ROTC. It was just one of those things where I just tried it. Like I knew nothing about it, so I just, there was one way to find out is just do it. So yeah, kind of same as Sergeant Balicoco. I bought my house at 26. I didn't, 0% down. So for me, I love the Guard only because I came from a rough neighborhood. I grew up Marites my whole life. People kind of have that stereotype against you, like you're not gonna do or you're not gonna be much. I was, the typical troubled kid. The only time you ever see me in school is during football season because I needed grade checks, and if I didn't have that, I didn't play. So I definitely did come from a rough upbringing, and for me to turn my life around, I mean, it's kind of cliche, but I owe everything to the Guard.
Sort of interested, Sergeant Balicoco and Sergeant Peter. Could you share what high school you attended?
I went to McKinley High School.
And I went to Roosevelt High School. We were upper campus.
That's awesome.
So I wanted to just, in addition to what Peter said, I grew up very modestly. I was a first generation immigrant, and the first house that we lived in when I moved here was the 6 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment. So I think from a very young age, same thing, I knew that if I wanted to make something of myself or anything that I wanted, a car, a house, education, I would definitely not get it from my parents, which is not at any fault of their own, them bringing me here to the United States to be able to afford me the opportunity to do whatever I wanted to do. That was definitely opportunity enough. So with that being said, I wanted Peter to be on this call because we were actually, I feel like our upbringing was one thing. We kind of split in our career paths. So we did different things, yet somehow we are actually in the same position now. So I definitely want to convey that there's no right or wrong way to do things. And I wish at a younger age, like I knew that as well. But with that being said, let's jump into the National Guard, like what we are, what we do. So the first thing to know about the National Guard is like we're citizen soldiers. So for 90% of the Guard, we're citizens first, meaning like the 28 days out of the month, you're maybe a bartender or a cook at a restaurant or a lawyer, or doctor, you have your civilian careers, but 1 week in a month, we get together, we train together. So that's why, you hear that slogan, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. So this is that's first and foremost, this is a part-time commitment. So it gives you the opportunity to go after that career path that you want or go to school. So you don't have to make this a full-time commitment, even though you want to serve your country or you want to get that educational benefit to go to school. Another thing to consider about the National Guard and why we're different, even though we wear the same uniform as active duty, is we actually have a dual mission, meaning we have a federal mission, meaning we could be deployed overseas or work with our active duty counterparts, but at the same time, we also have a mission to our state. So that's why you'd see a lot of us maybe part of maybe a couple of years ago, helping out with the lava mission on Big Island, or whenever there's like a natural disaster, a hurricane, or even a man-made disaster. We're there at the beck and call of the governor as well as the president. So that's in a nutshell, like who we are. In addition to that, being a part-time soldier, it actually provides you a lot of full-time benefits, meaning because it's only a part-time commitment, you can go ahead and, go to school full-time, or a lot of our soldiers are actually full-time students. In addition to that, again, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're using educational benefits from the Guard to pursue their civilian career as well. However, even though they have their civilian career, someone who doesn't have a career yet, meaning like a student in high school, this can really give you a step up from everyone else, meaning, well, for example, someone who chooses to be like a combat medic. Imagine a 17-year-old with no experiences or job skills per se, but they join the National Guard, they go to their training and they come back and they actually have a national register in EMT. So they can go ahead and use that experience and actually be an EMT in the civilian world as well. Everything that they are doing and training that they received from the military, that actually translates into college credits as well. So the efforts that you put into the National Guard, it will definitely come back in like multifolds, So with that being said, Peter, did you want to, anything that I missed as far as educational benefits?
No, you kind of hit all the points as far as the education benefits. The one thing I do want to put out, and it's kind of right now because of the whole pandemic, we don't really talk about it too much, but the state tuition assistance is also there too, yeah. Because like Sergeant Balicoco said, we are dual mission. We do have the federal tuition assistance that can help, pay for your your students' college, but also we have the state tuition assistance, which is currently suspended right now because of the pandemic. But once everything clears up and we get that funding back, we have that option to utilize the state tuition assistance as well as on top of the federal tuition assistance.
So in addition to some educational benefits, being able to pay for college, there's also opportunity for on-the-job training. So like I said, someone who maybe didn't want to go to a four-year college, they can go ahead and actually use their benefits for vocational degrees or certification, like, hey, maybe I want to be an esthetician or massage therapist or a plumber. There's also credentialing assistance to assist with that as well.
Could you share
Um,
how you used
yeah,
your education benefits and what degree you guys
go
received?
ahead.
Could you share with the group like what degrees or how you folks used your education benefits?
Okay, so for myself, when I finished basic training in AIT and I came back and I was eligible for the federal tuitions assistance. So that's about $4,000 a year. So I signed up for that as well as FAFSA. So that pretty much covered my tuition because I started out at KCC. So, it's a little affordable than the University of Hawaii. But with that being said, if you couple those two things up, you definitely should be able to pay for the University of Hawaii as well to get a four-year degree. So I didn't finish school right away, meaning college right away, because I actually got deployed maybe a couple years into my contract. But actually, that actually helped me out in the long run because with my veterans status, I was actually able to be qualified for a different type of GI Bill. And that GI Bill is called the Post 9/11 GI Bill. And what that allowed me to do was basically it paid for 100% of my education. It paid for a book stipend throughout the school year. In addition to that, it also actually paid me to go to school. So right now the rate is E5, which is a sergeant, that's one rank lower than me, with dependent rate. So when you have dependents, like children, a husband, a wife, etc., you actually get paid a little bit more in your stipend or housing allowance. So I was a college student making about $3,000 a month just to go to school full time. So with that benefit, I was able to finish my associates at KCC. I went to Shidler, the College of Business, to finish off my four-year degree. And my degree plan was in human resource management and business. Peter?
Okay, and for me, yeah, so I do have my PhD. You folks that don't know, it's my public high school diploma. So yeah, I mean, I've accomplished a lot. No, but I actually didn't go to college right away. Like it actually took me 10 years to go back to school. I just enrolled back into college, I want to say last September. So since then, I mean, I'm still in school. I have 32 credits now, but I haven't paid anything out of pocket yet. So, I mean, for me, I use a federal tuition assistant because I'm taking a online school through Trident. Um, I'm taking up Homeland Security. So that's kind of the route because that's the route I kind of want to take as far as staying employed with the federal side. So that's kind of why I chose that path.
Thanks, Sergeants. Go ahead. We have a question from the panel. Derek?
Yeah, thanks for your time. Sorry, I had my camera off because I was eating lunch, so I didn't
No,
want
it's
to.
okay.
So I have a question. So we have a student who says he wants to go into the National Guard with the plans to go on to college. So, and I just am not familiar. So if they start at UH and then they transfer to a mainland school, is that something that they can do?
Yes.
It is. So oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead, Peter.
Okay. Yeah, so what happens is, let's say you join in Hawaii and you decide, you come home from basic training, you decide like, hey, I want to go to UNLV, right? So what happens is you coordinate with, your sergeant that's in charge of you, the guy that does the operations, and you tell him like, hey, I want to go to school in Nevada, I got accepted. All they do is they transfer you over to Nevada and, you can attend UNLV. And when you transfer to a state like Nevada or Western Oregon, your tuition and room and board is actually covered. So because you're in the National Guard in Nevada, UNLV is basically free. Everything is covered. Yeah. So each state is gonna have their own different, what you can get. out of that school or whatever university you wanted to attend. Each state has a different benefit to it for being in the National Guard. So, that's something you just follow up with your recruiter or whoever, your students talk to. But everyone should kind of know. And if not, we have like a little booklet that kind of shows all the different universities and what they pay out for being in the National Guard.
Is there a minimum age? How does a student enroll? And then is there a commitment? How long do they have to stay in?
Okay, so the minimum requirement as far as age is you have to be at least 17, right? And on track to graduate. And I add that in only because, some students, they join and then life happens, right? They, something happens where they can't really commit to their high school, and because I know, because I was there, I almost not graduated so many times. So, if in the event that happens, then, like your enlistment kind of, we'd have to renegotiate your contract or whatnot. But for the most part, for age 17 is a minimum, and then maximum you have to enlist before 35. And in the commitment wise, we, no matter what military service you join, whether it's, the Army, Navy, National Guard, Reserve, everybody has to serve at least 8 years, what we call a military service obligation. Now, each branch breaks it down differently. For us in a National Guard, you can either commit to a 6x2 contract or a 3x5 contract, meaning for 6 years, you're gonna put on the uniform, you do the once a month, 2 weeks out of the year. And then for the remainder two, you're in what we call the IRR, which is basically you're like on the bench, right? You don't show up to drill, but if anything bad happens and they say like, hey, this guy used to do artillery and we need artillery guys, they can bring you back on within those 2 years. So, I tell all my soldiers, like, after you're done with your 6 years, just do the two more, because at least get paid for it instead of just waiting. And, now the chances of you being called, I don't want to say it's less than likely, because I know guys that, waited their time out and they haven't been called back. But, the chances are still there. So why not just get paid for that? So those are the two commitments and the minimum age requirements and stuff like that.
To add on to Derek's question, while deployed, can you continue your education? This is a question from Mr. Garo.
Yeah, so while you're deployed, you can actually do like online courses. When I was deployed, I was taking an online course, and a lot of other soldiers who were pursuing higher education was able to do the same track as well. There's a lot of multitasking on your part, because you're doing a mission first and foremost while you're over there, and of course the time difference. So but with that being said, with technology nowadays, you could be going to an online school that's based on the East Coast, West Coast, but you can definitely continue your education while you're deployed. Does that answer your question, Sergeant Major Garo? Not sure. Okay, got it. So with that being said, we can do like an open forum for questions. And once everyone is complete, I can go ahead and go through a list of questions for those of you who, for those folks that weren't able to be here but emailed their questions. So I can open it up to the floor. Okay, I can go ahead.
Actually, if you could share with the group, because I know when we talked before, you shared like how some would get deployed, others would not. If you could share perhaps your experience on any kind of tour of some sort.
Okay, definitely. So that is a question that comes up a lot, like, oh, can I deploy? What are the likelihood of me deploying? Well, in simplest terms, it really depends, right? So there's, although there's like hundreds and hundreds of different jobs in the military in general, we kind of separate them into two categories, meaning combat arms and combat support. So combat arms, meaning infantrymen, those types of jobs where they're basically, you know, the ones kicking down doors of bad guys and breaking their stuff, I guess. And there's combat support who are like maybe the administration, logistician who, you know, assist in more so the background and making sure like the combat arms get their job done. So with that being said, what is the likelihood of you getting deployed? Well, maybe if you were in the combat arms, there is a greater chance of you being deployed. What is the chances of National Guard deploying? Well, to put things in perspective, right now there's about 5,000, I would say about 5,000 service members deployed overseas right now. So to put that in perspective, there was 25,000 National Guardsmen who was in DC just around the inauguration time. So the numbers are drastically dwindling over the years, you know, since we've been in this conflict for over the course of 20 years. So can you get deployed? Yes. What are the chances? It really depends what unit you're in, what job you have. But with that being said, like for myself, I'm a human resources sergeant or specialist. How many times have I deployed? I've deployed twice in my career of 16 years. However, one of those deployments I actually volunteered for. So if I didn't volunteer throughout my 16-year career, I would have only deployed once. And then Peter can go ahead and share all of his stories.
Yeah, so like she mentioned earlier, we're like the total opposite. So I actually joined a job thinking like, hey, I'm gonna do some combat stuff, right? So I'm gonna probably get deployed. No, that was absolutely wrong. I've been in for 10 years and I haven't deployed once. I've tried 3 times, and every single time I only almost deployed. So to me, that's not good enough. I want that opportunity. You know, it might sound crazy, but for me, is like, how often do, you know, anybody get to say, you know, they got to see, you know, a different country or experience a different culture? You know, everybody, you know, all my boys that went to Afghanistan recently, right? And it's weird because as soon as I became a recruiter, they got orders to deploy. Like I've been in that unit for almost 10 years. And as soon as I left, so everybody was telling me like, you should have left earlier, right? But for me, it was like, you know, they came back and they're like, you know, I appreciate everything we have more, you know, because up there, yeah, sometimes it was miserable, sometimes it was fun, but you know, we're there to do a job, right? But they also got to see like some pretty neat things up there. So that's the kind of opportunities that I want. Now, I'm not saying that a deployment is super fun and that's why I want to go, but for me, I just wanted to experience something different and appreciate what we have more, because you know, everybody takes things for granted. Yeah, so I just, you know, my mindset is like, I guess I just needed to reset my mindset.
Awesome. So the questions are coming in. So if a student had a criminal history or maybe a mental health issue, how does the guard handle that?
So as far as criminal history, it just depends on, you know, what criminal history they've had, right? Like if it's a felony, the chances of them joining are slim to none. It just depends. Like I'm actually working somebody that, you know, got in trouble for drinking as a minor and, you know, stuff like that, traffic, you know, traffic infractions. So it really depends on the severity of the criminal history as far as that. Mental illness, that is a kind of, you know, because you wouldn't, me personally, you wouldn't want somebody that isn't stable mentally to be next to you, especially in a high stress environment. But that doesn't mean they're ruled out either, because mental illness can be anything from, you know, like self-infliction to, you know, a mild depression. So that, I'm not a doctor, so I wouldn't personally say no, they can't join automatically, but I would, you know, look into stuff like that before I make that determination whether they can or not. It's hard as far as mental illness and stuff like that. It's kind of hard to just say in a general sense.
That's great. Another question was, instead of a high school diploma, can they sign up to the guard with a GED?
Yes, you can. as long as it's a high school equivalent, you're able to do it. Or if not a high school equivalent, you have, I believe, 15 college credits, you're able to join.
So Mr. Garo has the golden question. How'd you become personally interested in your career?
Well, for me, as career as far as recruiting sergeant major, or just in general as far as picking the National Guard.
Well, I guess in general, but most specifically, I guess you decided to join the military or the guard.
Okay.
You can mix it up.
Okay, so for me, I can talk forever about this. For me, I grew up in a rough neighborhood. Like I said, I grew up in Kalihi my whole life, always up to no good. I barely showed up to school. I'm first generation American here. My parents are immigrants. I was lucky enough to born here. I didn't have to go through the hardship my mom and dad went through. So when I came at age, all my cousins, so everybody in my generation, they all joined the military, but they all went active duty. So I didn't want to follow that trend. So the military was never in the back of my mind. I've never done ROTC and stuff like that. It's funny because I used to laugh at ROTC people, but now they're laughing at me because they didn't join and I did. But, I was that type of guy, but when I graduated, and I was, going through my personal stuff, my cousin talked to me and he was like, dude, you should try the military, man. I was like, nah, man, I don't want to do that. You guys are going to be robots, but he was like, no, it's not like that. But, go reserve at National Guard, because if you don't like what you do, you're only doing it once a month, and if you decide this is what you want, then switch over to active duty later. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. And I ended up loving it. I chose artillery because, my friends were in it. To be honest, like, it wasn't something that I thought was cool. I just did it because I knew somebody there. So I chose that job. I loved it. The camaraderie is great. Some of these guys in the artillery unit are closer to me than my own blood families are. So, for me, there's a lot of passion that, when I talk about this unit and all this stuff, like, there's so much passion about it. Also, why I became a recruiter, because, like I said, I grew up in a rough spot, and my recruiter gave me an opportunity to change my life. And as cliche as it is, that's why I became a recruiter, is because I want to give that same opportunity to kids that were in my position or, similar positions as I was.
So like I said, Peter and I were just total polar opposites, because I was the JRTC kids that he was teasing in high school, running around the field in our fatigues, rappelling off of the wall, stuff like that. So how did I personally become interested in my career and why I chose the Guard? Well, I actually had a very great working relationship with my recruiter. I knew him all through high school, just from being in JRTC. That already gave me a little bit of military background. But why I chose the Guard was, although I wanted to travel, get some experience, this and that, I always knew that I wanted to put roots in Hawaii and have a family in Hawaii, etc. So being in the Guard allowed me to do that. So rather than going active duty and, PCS, meaning like moving every 3 years, I got the opportunity to work full-time for the National Guard here. And I get to live here, work here, serve here. And why did I choose my career path? Actually, my recruiter did help me with my career path. Because he knew me all through high school. He's, you're very detail-oriented, organized. Maybe you should go human resources. So with that being said, I tried out human resources in the Guard, and actually, I did like it. So I actually majored in human resources on the civilian side. I guess I am a people person. I love, helping anybody that comes into my office. It really makes my day when they're like, thank you so much, you helped me. It's such a big deal to me being able to help somebody. So I started out my career, helping soldiers, maybe in the beginning, mid, end of their career. And, I had the opportunity to switch to recruiting. And it's also the same thing, you still help and take care of the people that you meet, making sure they start off on the right foot in their military career as well. Yeah.
So how do students sign up?
I can leave my phone number in the chat box. Nah, just kidding. So basically, you just get in contact with a recruiter, and so the first step would be talk to a recruiter, right? Kind of get, me as a recruiter, when I first meet you, I kind of explain everything about the National Guard. I kind of like, without probing, I guess you could say, like, I'll ask the right questions and I'll see where your interests are. And because for me, if you're in a situation where you need money right now, I'm not going to recommend the National Guard. And that's just me being honest. And that's only because, you work only once a month, 2 weeks out of the year. So I kind of get a feel of where they're leaning towards. If you're leaning towards more education, yeah, I'm going to preach the National Guard all day. But as far as that, yeah, so within the first meeting, I kind of gathered all that information. And then, we have a practice test in our office that, I let the applicants take. So that kind of gauges where they score within the ASVAB, because you need a 31 on your ASVAB score to get in. So if they score lower than that on the practice test, I'm not going to waste their time by taking them to MEPS on Pearl Harbor to take the ASVAB and then knowing they're going to fail anyway. So you're already setting them up for failure. And once the ASVAB is completed and they, get 31 or higher, then we sit down and we talk about jobs, what jobs we have available, and, if there's a bonus for that job or not. And once they select their job, then we just take them down to take the medical, physical, and enlistment day.
So in Q, this is going with some options. It's a nice lead in. So the situation of this pandemic, does that change anything as far as students enrolling in the Guard?
Not really. We still get a lot of numbers in, because now with the pandemic being cut off, a lot of them aren't really looking for well, as far as the students now, a lot of them aren't looking for a steady paycheck. They're still looking for ways to pay for their college. And because a lot of their employments, let's say some jobs shut down, now they don't have money to go to school because some kids are paying out of pocket. They're using us to help them, pay for their college. So as far as numbers decreasing, I haven't seen any decrease. I the way in my office anyway, I think it's still a steady, like a steady line where it's not really going down drastically or it's not going up a lot. It's just, I don't know, I guess, yeah, it's still steady. I don't know if sorry, Balicoco, you can see the same thing, but
So for me personally, there's less ways that we're able to contact students. We're not able to go on to school campuses. A lot of the meetings are virtual, like the we're doing now. However, even though the demographics have shifted, same thing. Like, I don't think there's been a drastic change in the numbers. However, I do see drastic changes in, I guess you could call it the why people call me and why people are looking into the Guard, at this time. So, for example, I'll get a call and they'll be like, I'm not really interested in educational benefits. Like, I just want to, maybe during this COVID time, and they had a lot of time to think, with themselves. They're like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I just want to do something bigger for my community. Like, what have I really done to put forth my efforts into other than just myself? I want to give back to my community. Like, there's so many people who are worse off than me. Or, for example, there are folks who got laid off from their job, whether they work in restaurant industry, it got hit hard with the lack of tourism. So they'll give us a call because, they just need a job, maybe training. This is their chance to do something new. It was always in the back of their head, but they have finally the time to really put it in motion. There are a lot of people who got laid off and they're actually on active duty orders right now, assisting the state, the Department of Health. They're on task force COVID. They've been on active duty orders for like over a year now. So being in the National Guard, even though it is a part-time commitment, it affords you the opportunity to make it full-time, if the opportunity is there, if you want it, for sure.
So another question in the chat was, if they are in the Guard and they want to say enlist, like it says active duty, how does that work?
Yeah,
so
so if
basically,
someone,
Go
So if
ahead. Go
someone
ahead.
was in the guard, it is actually, you can go active duty. What you would do is request for a conditional release, and the National Guard would release you to go to the active duty. Would I recommend starting off with the guard? So this is an analogy that I like to use, and I got it from my boss. So he likes to call being in the guard like dating the army. So maybe I don't want a full-on commitment, you know, I don't want to jump into this marriage, maybe if I don't like it, you know. So let's date the guard first, you know, because really, if it's not for you, like Peter said, it's 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. You're doing something part-time for a lot of full-time benefits. However, it really depends on what the person, what's the right fit for them. For example, you know, if a student was not having like a really great home life, maybe there's drugs involved or like physical abuse, maybe they need to get out of that situation. I might have really, you know, recommended active duty, you know, but for someone who's not in that situation, you know, the guard is a good foot in the door. It gives you a little taste of the army. You go through the same training as everybody else, active, reserve, National Guard. However, that training, you're going to come back home to Hawaii and you can start whatever career you'd like, whether it's going to school or, you know, starting job training. Yeah.
One of the cool things that we talked about the last time we met was the things that we don't know. Because when you shared about the car registration, things like that, those are cool perks. Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
I guess my question is, how many people in this chat room pay, I don't know, $500, maybe $400, $300 for, you know, their car registration? Probably everyone, right? Depending on how heavy your vehicle is. So for the National Guard, we pay a flat rate of $72.50, regardless of how heavy your vehicle is. So those are just, you know, small perks, I guess you could say, for service members of the National Guard. Peter, did you have anything to add?
no, I just wanted to add, like, you know, I think it's a cool thing because I drive a Silverado. So if it wasn't for that blue form that we get every year, I'd be paying $546 for that registration form. Yeah. And the registration form is only good for one vehicle though. But I mean, you know, you pick the heaviest one, it's gonna help a lot.
That's awesome. So, you know, when these folks meet with students, what kind of traits do you think rise to the top that would make a successful soldier?
Drive. That's, I mean, for me is it's the motivation because being, I'm gonna say this in a general sense, being in the military isn't always great. You know what I mean? Sometimes we do a lot of stuff and you're thinking like, why are we doing this? But if the motivation is there, it's not gonna matter. You know, you're just gonna get the job done. If it's not for you, it's for the guys next to you. So, you know, for me, it's just the motivation. Like I said, I came from nothing. I had terrible personality traits. You know, I was just a terrible person, right? But when it came down to it, I was competitive. I had that drive, you know. So for me, it was, you know, for me, and I guess you could say it's a lazy way of thinking, but for me, it was like, hey man, let's get this done now so we can just relax, you know. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Sorry, Balicoco might have a different opinion.
I guess what makes a successful soldier? There's a lot of aspects that go into characteristics and traits. I think being able to work with others, that's a very important trait. You're always gonna be a part of a team, you know, like, and Peter said, if it's not for you, it's for the person next to you. There's gonna be rarely, in the civilian side, maybe, you know, you're gonna be working a job where someone else's life doesn't depend on you. But in the military, it might, you know, so I would hope that that would drive you to be able to rise up and complete the mission with that buddy next to you. Yeah.
So another question came in. It asked, so how much can they make to add to their budget if they're entering the guard? So I guess what would be like, I guess the starting salary?
Okay, so for someone who, didn't have JRTC, didn't have Civil Air Patrol, so they're coming in as maybe an E1. They didn't have like college credits to, go up in rank. Someone who's just starting off as an E1, they'll go off to basic training, and monthly they'll make about, I would say about $4,000 monthly, just being a entry level. So that's, for a 17-year-old, that's kind of a lot of money, $4,000 a month. And you're definitely not spending that at basic training. You're not going to have time to spend that. So you're going to come back with a pretty good nest egg, Peter, would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have much. So when I came back from basic training, I mean, I had a lot of money in my bank, and it disappeared faster than I earned it. So
That's funny.
So if there's any financial planners on this line, please reach out to Peter Lay.
no, I'm good now. I'm good now.
And
That
so
was-
so adding to the about talking about basic training, there's a question there. How long is basic training? But also, like you shared on our last talk, the different locations of where people can or are sent to basic training. If you could touch on that.
So basic training is generally about 10 weeks long. Um, it depends. If you go straight through and you pass every single test and you complete every single task, basic training is about 10 weeks long. Now, after basic training, you go into what we call advanced individual training, which is your AIT, and that's your job training. So it depends on your job. The more technical your job, the longer your school is, and the less technical, the shorter it is. So, for instance, my job, which is a 13 Bravo artillery, I was doing 10 weeks in basic training, and I only had 7 weeks in AIT. Versus somebody that becomes a linguist, they're gone for about 2 years. So the length of your training just depends on what job you choose. And the 4 different locations is Fort Sill, Oklahoma, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and
Benny.
Fort Benning, Georgia. Yeah, sorry, I'm blank.
Any other questions?
We can definitely, what determines where they get sent? I would say what job you chose. I think that it plays a factor as well. For example, if you were an infantryman, most likely you're going to do what's called a one station unit training, which is going to be in Fort Benning, Georgia. So that's just where infantrymen go. I think for artillery, Peter, you guys went to Oklahoma?
Yeah, Fort Sill. But it's kind of different now. I would say the biggest factor would be timing, because it all falls on the training seats. Like I've seen when I went, I stayed in Oklahoma, but I've seen soldier go from South Carolina and they flew into Oklahoma. So I think right now it's timing. There was a comment.
Yes.
So
All that
already determined before the end. Yes. So I don't enlist anybody until we know exactly what job they're gonna do, and it's a job more than likely that they agree upon. We don't. Well, me, I can speak for myself, but I don't enlist anybody into a position just to enlist somebody into a position. During our meetings with the applicant, they're gonna know exactly what they're gonna be doing prior to enlisting. The only thing that they find out day of enlistment is their ship date, because Pearl Harbor handles that, because they're the ones that are able to see the training seats and stuff like that, when the available training seats for when they ship, and because everything has to line up. So basic training has to line up with their AIT. So we cannot just ship them to basic training any day and then they come home, wait 6 months, and then go back to AIT. The only time that happens is if you're a high school junior, because when you're a high school junior, you leave during the summertime, right before senior year starts for basic training. You come home, complete senior year, and then you go back to your job training. That's the only time that happens. Other than that, yeah, everything has to line up. So their training seats are are the only thing they won't know until day of enlistment. You're welcome.
So if they have questions for both of you, what is the best way for folks to get a hold of either of you?
You can text me, call me, Instagram me, Facebook me, come down to my office. No, yeah, like the easiest way would just be call one of us, or email if you prefer email. If you're busy, you have like a small lunch break. You can email me, text me, call me. It doesn't matter.
We can go ahead and put our contact info in the chat box as well. I'll put as well because I got scoldings from Sergeant Major for not putting out my email on my business card.
Again, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. And any other questions from the gallery?
I think Sergeant Major Garo actually emailed me some questions. So
Nice.
if possible, I'd like to touch upon that.
Perfect. Yes.
So the first question is, what is your favorite part of your job? What is your favorite part of your job? Peter, what is the most favorite part of your job?
My favorite part, like you said, it might sound cliche, but changing lives. Like, just seeing an applicant get so stoked because, they either got a job they wanted, or, they're going into something where they have history in their family. Like one of my applicants, his grandfather was in the military and he's never known him. So he was stoked that he joined. And it's one way where I guess he felt like he was in touch with his grandfather, even though they've never met. So seeing stuff like that, I mean, it's pretty cool. Like I would say that's my favorite part of the job.
Yeah, for me, same thing. I had an applicant who had $40,000 of student loans, and he just didn't know how he was going to even begin to handle that. Even though you have like a good paying job, student loan is almost made for you to never pay off. It's ridiculous. So when I let him know that, he qualified for a $50,000 student loan repayment program, just seeing that look in his face, like I'm free, like this burden is just lifted off of my shoulder. So being able to, provide him with that information and the opportunity, that's pretty priceless, What advice do you have for someone who is interested in the industry that you work in?
What is some advice here? Like, just stay motivated. Like, it's not always gonna be fun. You're gonna have a lot of fun times, but it's not always fun. So you just have to stay motivated and push through it. Don't let other people's negativity change your mind on why you decided to do this. That would probably be the biggest advice.
I think for me, I think every industry that you work in, you just got to do what you got to do to get your foot in the door. So don't be afraid to, be an
Move
intern.
up.
Like, yeah, like it's, sometimes like you just got to take that paid internship to get where you want to be. So for any industry, I would advise just to do what you got to do to get your foot in the door. The next question was, how did you get in this position? Where did you apply for this job? So I definitely want both me and Peter to answer this question because again, our careers were so different, yet we're still in the same position today. So Peter, go ahead. How did you get to this position?
My hard work and dedication. No. So a little, I guess we can go into a little like, more about my background. I've done 8th grade twice. I've done 9th grade twice. I've done 10th grade twice, and my mom were always mad at me because she always had to pay for correspondence and summer school and stuff like that. So, you can say I was her most expensive child. Um, but yeah, so, like, I don't know, I just grew up rough and I decided to join the military. You know, I'm not going to say um, I was shamming or what, hiding or lazy or whatever, but I just found ways to work smarter instead of harder. So a lot of the times I did the bare minimum. A lot of the times I, excelled in like stuff like PT and stuff like that. I excelled in PT, but when it came down to, you know, schoolwork, if you tell me I only need a high school diploma, that's all I'm gonna give you, you know. So just throughout my military career, I just did what I had to do. And when this position came up in the National Guard to become a full-time guardsman, whether it's recruiting or admin or logistical, you apply for it like a regular job. You go on the state website, and then you find that job that you're looking for. You apply for it. You have to go through a board interview and then get selected. So I went through that process, and here I am.
So going back to me and Peter being polar opposites, so how did I get this position? So for me, I guess you could say I was that A student. I was, summa cum laude. I was top of my class. I always wanted to excel and beat the other person next to me and this and that. But hey, there's no right way to do something, because let's be real here. Again, you saw Peter. He could have been a total hooligan. I don't know what he was. But look, me and him are in the exact same position. It's crazy, right? So
Yeah.
Life is crazy. There's not a right or wrong way to do something, but if you have the determination and drive, you'll be able to reach whatever goal that you set out for yourself. So, being in the Guard, again, even though it's a part-time commitment, again, it allows you the opportunity to work full-time if that's what you want to do. Again, you build your resume, whether it's your civilian or your military resume, and when a position becomes available full-time, you can go ahead and apply for it just like any other job. However, positions in the Guard are only for Guard members. So that's, another avenue that you can use for yourself. You're not only limited to civilian careers, but you can work full-time for the Guard. Yeah. What education did you need for your job? Oh, Peter has his
Yeah,
PhD,
my
yeah?
PhD. Yeah,
His public high school diploma.
yeah, that's all I needed.
So obviously he did very well in his interview skills. So yeah, for the Guard, of course, at the minimum, you just need your GED or high school equivalency. But I definitely recommend throughout your career, if you retire and you don't have at least your bachelor's, you're definitely doing a disservice to yourself. The education benefits is there. I encourage everyone to use it, because with the military, they're going to get out of you as much as they can. So you got to get out of the military as much as you can, for sure.
Exactly. So if I can be a college student, anybody can be a college student.
Okay, the next question is, what are some examples of your daily tasks?
There's definitely a lot of driving. As far as recruiting, there's definitely a lot of driving, going back and forth between your offices, meeting with, potential applicants, all the way down to, paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork involved as far as gathering information from the applicant, making copies. But the best part is, just like I mentioned earlier, just taking them down, seeing their enlistment day, and just seeing the look on their face where it's like, I finally did it. Some guys or some applicants take longer than others to go through the process. So when they finally, after 6 months and they finally enlist, like, it's, to me, it's worth it.
I would agree with Peter, because this morning I went from my home in Salt Lake to Kalaeloa, back to McCauley to pick up my applicant, to MEPS to drop her off to take her ASVAB. Then I went to Washington Wahiwa, and I'm back in my office in Diamond Head. So it is very busy doing tasks here and there, but so I do listen to a lot of audiobooks to keep my brain exercising. You do spend a lot of time on the road, but yeah, and events like this, marketing to let people know the benefits of the garden as well. What are the most important skills for your job? So because of all that driving and going around, juggling, multiple applicants, seeing what's best for them in their career, definitely multitasking skills and time management. What do you think, Peter?
I think the most important skill in this job is listening, because I can talk all day about why the applicant should join, but if I'm not listening to why he wants to join, they're not going to join. Yeah, so I mean, I kind of learned that from my wife too, because I always hear it when I don't listen to her. So
we're close to the 3 o'clock hour. Maybe a final question before we conclude.
Okay. What is one life hack or adulting advice you can share with us? This is from like real talk questions. Peter, go ahead. A life
one
hack or
life hack.
Yeah.
Um,
or adulting advice?
Just don't sell yourself short. I've done that a lot throughout my childhood and high school, and it took me a while to, figure it out. Like, just don't sell yourself short. You're here. You might as well make the most of it.
I think of an advice that I would share to young adults would be stop sharing everything on social media.
That too.
Too much.
That too. I agree.
Potential employer could be looking at your social media. Actually, I do a lot of social media, meaning when I get an applicant, I look them up on social media, and there's a lot of stuff I find. So be careful what you put out there on social media. That is my adulting advice, 101.
That is an excellent tip to close on. Oh my goodness. But Sergeant Lee, Sergeant Balicoco, thank you so much. Again, this is gonna be this has been recorded. I'm gonna post it on YouTube. I'll share with you all. But really appreciate you guys taking time out of your afternoon to be with us today. Super informative. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well,
and thank you everyone who signed in
Sheldon.
today.
Thank you, Sheldon and Alfie, for coordinating this. I really appreciate it.
All right, have a good afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
You too. Bye.
You got to end the recording.